you guys? Happy Friday. Kristen here. I know I'm a couple minutes behind. I apologize about that. I got a couple messages from Sherry, Diane. I apologize, but I'm here. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Hey, Sherry, I'm going to text you right now. Group, I'm here. Diane, hello. I'm so glad you guys could join. Comment below if I don't know that you're here. So I want to make sure everyone is in the right spots. So guys, as many of you guys know, I'm actually not in my office here in Florida. I'm actually in Colorado for the month of July, and so I'm in my Airbnb, and so this is like my makeshift office for the next few weeks. So you'll be seeing me in different parts of my space, and I hope this will work for you guys. So I don't have my whiteboard, but I do have a little notes that I'll be kind of reading off of. So if you can't see this, if you want to zoom in, you can, or you can just listen to me talk today, because I'm going to be dropping tons of knowledge on you guys. And I did the poll earlier this week with what you wanted to learn more about, and truth be told, I thought ice creams would be the most popular topic, and it was a close second, but I was so happy to hear that you wanted to learn more about inflammatory foods and how to avoid them. And that really shows me that those of you who voted for that really value your health. And not to say that others of you that didn't vote for that don't value your health, but I'm so glad that health is important to a lot of you guys. And as I always say, health first, weight loss second, both with strategy. And I'll talk even more about that towards the end of today's training. So like I said earlier, comment below if you're just joining in. I will be answering questions for you guys at the end of the training today. But if you have questions as they come about while I'm talking, you can go ahead and comment in the chat. So I'll definitely make sure I answer those questions for those of you who are joining me live. And if you're catching the replay, if you jot down your questions in the comments, I will definitely make sure I respond to you as well. Okay. And also, while I was preparing this training for you guys, like, this is a topic, inflammatory foods. I could talk about this for hours and hours. Okay. There are entire books, entire courses on inflammatory foods, number one. But number two, there's a lot of confusion out there, not just like in the, hey Sherry, not just in like the consumer world, but also like in the dietitian, nutrition, medical worlds, because there's so many conflicting studies out there. And I know a number of you are probably, internet researchers, and you're like, I'm so confused. Like, I thought grains were good, and now I hear they're inflammatory. So I'm going to clear up a lot of the confusion that is out there for you guys, okay, to the best of my ability. And I'll be honest with you when there are still some, loopholes, but I'm going to give it to you straight, okay, because that's exactly what I do with my clients, and I'll be answering your questions as well. Okay, so this way. Without further ado, let's go ahead and jump right into this topic. So, how to avoid inflammatory foods. So first and foremost, I want to talk a little bit about inflammation, because I know a lot of us like hear like inflammation is bad, blah, 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 but no one really knows like what it is, okay? And just like how rampant it is. And there are a lot of doctors out there, a lot of studies that show that inflammation is the root of literally every autoimmune disease, every illness, cardiovascular disease, cancer, depression, and it is, okay? And so that is what inflammation is, right? And so I want to give you the exact definition of what inflammation is so you guys understand. And just so you guys know too, where I get all of my information from, and any, accredited dietitian, nutritionist, anyone giving you nutrition information, you need to make sure that their information comes from a credible source. You cannot go on blogs, you cannot go on, websites that are sponsored by the Dairy Council or by the Soy Council, or, if they're medically backed, or I'm sorry, if they're sponsored by certain corporations. Like, you have to be careful of where your information comes from. So where I'm pulling my information today all comes from a website that is available to anybody, actually. Pub Health is what it's called, and I'm going to read to you right now because I want you guys to understand that this is exactly where I get all of my information from. Okay, so this pretty much comes from the U.S. National Health Institute. Okay, and this is also from the Academy of Nutritionists and Dietitians. That's where this definition comes from inflammation. Okay, so I'm gonna read that to you right now. So inflammation. Can you guys see me? Okay, comment below if you guys can see me. Okay, because I got a black screen. Can you all see me? Let me know. Type in the comments if you can see me. Looks like it went black. Okay. Well, I'm going to keep talking because it still says it's filming. Okay, so here we go. This is the definition of inflammation. Inflammation is an immune system response triggered by physical and mental triggers, okay, on the body. So physical can include injuries, all right? So if you like sprain your ankle, like I have multiple times, you're gonna see like a big bubble around it. That's inflammation in the body, okay? That's an example right there. So injury, thank you, Sherry, for letting me know. Injury, poor diet, noxious stimuli, so chemicals, pesticides, anything like artificial, chemical, man-made, microbial pathogens like viruses, okay? All of those things can trigger inflammation in the body. When a trigger remains and immune cells are continuously activated, chronic inflammation occurs. So when we're continuously adding these stressors to our life through diet, and other outside triggers, right? We always have this inflammation going on. When a chronic inflammation has been associated with many medical and psychiatric disorders, including cardiovascular disease, metabolic syndrome, arthritis, cancer, schizophrenia, mental health, and depression. Okay, so this is just how vast inflammation is. And so if you've resonated with any of that, you're probably like, well, I'm dealing with inflammation. And truth be told, guys, like inflammation, everyone has inflammation, right? It's impossible to have no inflammation in the body, right? But when we're constantly stressing our immune system, chronic stress leads to chronic inflammation. So we're stressing our immune system when we're not sleeping enough, when we're continuously eating a poor diet, when we're not taking care of our body like we should, right? When we have constant negative thoughts that are stressing our body, and that is putting a stress on your immune system. Okay, so it really is a lifestyle. And I want to stress that even before I get into the inflammatory foods, that when you have a lifestyle that reduces inflammation, you are going to be so much healthier, so much more successful on your weight loss journey, and just a happier person overall. Okay, so I wanted to kind of begin with that first because that's really important. Can you guys see me or hear me? It's still saying black. Sorry, I just want to make sure you guys can see me. Okay, anyway, what are inflammatory foods? So I'm going to go on to them. All right, so guys, I'm going to focus on inflammatory foods, and I'm not going to talk about, the common allergens. Some of these are common allergens, but allergens are not necessarily inflammatories. It really depends on the person, right? So don't get this confused. Also, guys, like a lot of these foods I'm going to talk about today, actually all of them, I should say, maybe not grains, are acidic. Thank you, Sherry. Are acidic, right? And if you've seen my webinar before yay, Sherry, thank you. If you've seen my webinar before, I talk about acidic versus alkaline foods. And so that's another great training as well. But these are all going to be inflammatory foods. All right, so these are the main inflammatory foods, the foods that trigger an immune system response, okay, and trigger your cells, right, to grow. So the first is high omega-6 oils, okay, and so these oils are safflower, canola, we've got vegetable oil, soybean oil, and even sunflower oil, okay? And the problem with all of these oils is that they're very high in omega-6. And when our diet is very high in omega-6, that will lead to inflammation, okay? Now, of course, it's better to have a balance of omega-6 and omega-3s. Omega-3s are the really heart-healthy, much better oils, like fish oil, for example, is very high in omega-3s. Flaxseed is very high in omega-3s, for example, as well. So we want to have a balance of omega-6 and omega-3 in order to have a nice balance in our health. But the problem is so many of our foods are high in omega-6, right? So we really want to avoid oils that are high in omega-6. Also, these particular oils I just mentioned, they are all highly, highly processed, okay? And so when you're putting these super highly processed foods into your body, right? I talked about the noxious stimulus earlier, right? These chemicals in your body, that's going to increase inflammation in the body, okay? Canola oil, I want to talk about that really quickly because canola oil over time has been praised as being more heart healthy than other vegetable oils out there. And the reason why canola oil has been preached as being more heart healthy is because it's lower in saturated fat than other vegetable oils, okay, like soybean oil, for example. And there's still studies out there that say that saturated fats are going to cause inflammation, right? But that's also, there's research for that and against that. So that can be confusing. But what you do need to understand about canola oil is that it's high in omega-6, which is going to be inflammatory, and it's highly processed, which is not good for you. So that's a reason right there to avoid canola oil, okay? Sunflower oil, although it's higher in omega-6s, it's actually really high in vitamin E. You get 28% of your daily vitamin E in sunflower oil. So sunflower oil, it's not the best oil. It's not like olive, avocado, or coconut oil, but it's not the worst. It's not as bad as like canola, vegetable oil, palm oil. Oh my God, palm oil, guys, is like the worst for the environment. It's also terrible for your arteries, so I would avoid it anyway. But yeah, so sunflower oil is like kind of in the middle there, to be truthful. I actually love sunflower butter, and I recommend that to a lot of my clients who can't eat nuts, for example. Okay, so that's the deal with omega-6 oils, right? So we want to cut those out. And the problem with those oils, we see them in so many snack foods. So we see them in chips. You guys, like even like the Terra chips that I love that are using like taro root and other sources of better carbohydrates, for example, you'll see that they're coated in safflower oil or canola oil. Trader Joe's, I love Trader Joe's. A lot of their foods have canola oil in them, right? High in omega-6. So you really want to make sure you're reading labels and seeing where this canola oil is. A lot of like the brand name, like even like Wegmans, for example, a lot of the Wegmans brands, they use canola oil in a lot of their stuff. Right? You go to the olive bar and like they use oil to kind of keep the olives from, keep them shelf stable, preserve them. They'll use canola oil on olives. It's like, wait, why? Right? So canola oil, it's super cheap. And so you find it everywhere. So if you're really trying to prevent inflammation, okay, if you have aches and pains, if you have chronic headaches, if you are trying to recover from an injury, right, if you have a lot of joint pain, you really want to minimize these oils in your diet. So look out for labels, okay, and these oils are hidden everywhere, guys, even in like broths. You'll find them in soups. You'll find them in so many things. Okay. Enough about omega-6 oils. Next one I want to talk about is dairy, okay? And actually, let me grab my marker real quickly because I want you guys, I'm going to put a question mark next to dairy. Okay. So dairy is, of course, when people think of inflammation, they're automatically like, let's cut dairy, okay? And I'm plant-based, so I don't consume dairy. Dairy is just not good for my digestive system. Personally, that's why I gave it up. But dairy is one of these foods that, politics plays such a role in the food industry. Like the dairy board is like everywhere, okay? And they're always saying that like soy is bad and nut alternatives are bad, blah, blah, blah. Dairy's the best. When you look on the internet, right, and you're seeing all these sites that dairy's great, it's heart healthy, it helps with weight loss, blah, 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 right? A lot of times that's backed by the dairy board. And I've been to several nutritionists and dietitians conventions and they're sponsored by the dairy board. Okay, so you have to be mindful of where your source is coming from. So I'm actually going to share with you guys an article today about dairy. And here's something that we have to understand too. The argument against dairy a lot of times has come from like the full fat dairies, okay? Like the creams and like the whole milks, right? And a lot of times people were saying those were inflammatory because they have higher saturated fat. And as I said earlier, the higher the saturated fat, the more inflammation they cause in the body, okay? So that's one argument against dairy. Here's another argument against dairy when it comes to inflammation, right? Dairy, a lot of people also don't know this, guys. Dairy is actually considered a carbohydrate. Oh, you lost me, Sherry? Can you see me now? Hey, Diane. Can you guys see me? So I want to make sure you can see me okay. Uh-oh. Comment if you can't see me. Lost me. Joys of Facebook Live. Hi, guys. Okay, well, it says I'm still going, so I'm just going to keep talking. All right. Dairy. A lot of people think dairy is a protein, right? Yes, dairy has protein in it, absolutely, but it's actually more of a carbohydrate because dairy has sugar in it, and dairy actually has a lot of sugar in it. It's called lactose, right? And lactose is what makes people lactose intolerant, makes it hard to digest. I'll talk about that in a second here. But dairy, yes, the body breaks it down as sugar, okay? So if you are diabetic or if you have PCOS, right, and you need to limit your sugar intake, obviously, then dairy is not a food food that's going to be conducive for you. Diane, you see me, thank you. Dairy is not going to be a food that you want to consume a lot of, right? Because your body is going to break it down as sugar. I'll give you an example, right? So 1 glass of milk, right? It might have, I don't know, 8 grams of protein, but there's 12 grams of sugar in it, right? And that's in like the lower amount of fat there is, typically there's a little bit more sugar in there, right? So although on the keto diet, for example, they're always saying full fat, because there's going to be less sugar, or it's going to have a less glycemic effect, because when you have sugar with fat, it blunts the effect on the blood, right? So you're not going to feel the glycemic index is lower, okay? But if you have like skim milk, non-fat milk, and you're just consuming just plain water in the milk, right? There's no fat, you're going to feel the effects of the sugar more. It's going to spike your blood sugar more often. So that's the argument right there between full fat dairy, which is higher in saturated fat, but then you have the skim dairy, right? And that's going to be, you know, more sugar, and it's going to have more of a glycemic effect on your body, okay? So if you're trying to reduce your insulin production, you got to start to reduce dairy in your body. That's just the argument right there. Now, the take-home message for dairy, okay, is that it's not great for diabetics, PCOS. If you have any autoimmune disease too, you know, dairy can have an effect on that. But just like limit your intake, okay, for the general population, and listen to your body. The real concern about dairy is digestion. That's the biggest concern with dairy, right? So for example, like that's why I gave it up. But also too, like there are different kinds of dairy. So the A1 milk protein we find in most dairy in the US, right? That is what's really hard to digest. But A2 beta protein, which is found in European cows, some US cows, there's even like the A2 brand of milk. I was in Kansas the other day and there was A2 milk everywhere, right, on the shelves. That is a better milk protein that is easier to digest. So if you struggle with digesting dairy, but you want to consume it, go for A2 dairy. So that is like specific cows in the US. It'll be labeled A2. Sheep's milk, goat milk is all A2 protein. Okay, so I hope that helps you guys. All right, so that's the dairy talk right there. Am I still with you guys? You see me, Diane? Awesome, I got a message here. I'm good now. Awesome, okay. Thanks for the feedback, you guys. Love this. And if I'm getting too chatty, comment below. Because like I said, I can talk about this for hours. And I'm even just like skimming, okay? I'm skimming the talk on inflammatory foods because like I can go forever. All right, so conventional and processed meats. So I want to talk about this. Obviously, guys, like I'm a vegetarian. I don't eat meat, but I am very objective, right? And I'll talk to you a little bit about me here. So conventional meats, that's like non-grass fed, that's like farm raised, or I'm sorry, like, you know, factory farm raised, I should say, using conventional farming methods. That meat is going to be highly inflammatory. And here's why. I want you guys to remember this statement, okay? You are what you ate, okay? So what do cows, chickens, pigs, what do they eat? They eat corn, they eat wheat, and they eat soybeans, okay? So wheat, which I'm actually going to get to next, okay, is inflammatory, right? And also too, like corn, high in omega-6s, right? Corn oil is also a high omega-6 oil. I should have said that earlier. Sorry. So these cows, these livestock, they're eating high omega-6 foods or for themselves. So when they eat that, you're eating. That's why the American diet is so high in omega-6s, and that's why we have such a rampant inflammation problem in this country. It is the root of every major illness. It is probably the root of your weight loss struggle as well, okay? If I had a better look at your diet, I would probably be able to tell you that. But that's something to consider. And even processed meats too, right? Because when they have processed meats, they're adding preservatives. There's all kinds of things they're adding to the meat to preserve it, obviously. And any noxious stimuli, as I said from that very first definition, can cause inflammation in the body, okay? So that's why we want to avoid conventional meats and processed meats, because you are what you ate, okay? Also too, like, you know, obviously grass-fed is going to be better. Pasture-raised, anything local will be a better option for you if you are consuming animal protein, as opposed to, you know, farm or, you know, conventional means of meat. Also too, guys, meat is really hard on your digestive system, primarily red meat. So red meat is going to be considered pork, beef, lamb, venison, anything gamey like that. is going to be considered red meat, and it's just really, really hard on your gut, okay, to digest. So if you struggle with digestion, really limit that protein as much as possible or take it out completely. Okay, moving on. So the next highly inflammatory food, I'm actually going to kind of put these in a, I'm going to talk about them all at once. We have wheat, gluten, and grains. Okay. And wheat is what I want to talk about because I know wheat has been considered this like heart healthy food for so long, okay? And although like wheat could have been good back in the day, the way wheat is processed now in the US is abysmal, okay? We essentially strip wheat, okay? Most wheat breads on the market are highly, highly processed and they're refined, right? So they are stripped of vitamin B and all of the nutrients. They're stripped of a lot of their fiber. So that's why sprouted wheat bread, okay, sprouted grains are going to be better because they have more nutrients, more proteins, amino acids in them than the refined proteins, okay, or the refined wheats and grains. But wheat overall is inflammatory, okay? And not only is wheat inflammatory, it's actually a really, really great book called Wheat Belly. And there's another book called Grain Brain. And wheat is highly addictive, okay? The more we eat wheat, the more we crave it. So those of you who feel like you can't live without your wheat bread, there's a reason why, right? Because wheat is known to essentially be kind of like an opioid, right? It is very, very addictive, okay? So minimizing wheat consumption is going to be good. Another reason why, you know, wheat is inflammatory is because of its gluten, the gluten in it, okay? And gluten is problematic for a couple of reasons. One, gluten is very high in lectins, okay? Lectins are little plant proteins, okay, that are known to poke little holes in your gut. So if you've heard of something called leaky gut before, okay, and there's also a statistic out there that says 95% of autoimmune conditions and just like inflammation and poor health is caused by leaky gut, okay? And lectins are known to poke holes in the gut wall, right? So any toxins that you're consuming from pesticides, any chemicals in the food is going to leak into the bloodstream and wreak havoc on your body. And when any havoc is wreaked on your body, guess what? Your immune system has to respond. It's stressed. That's chronic inflammation right there. So everything's connected. I hope this is starting to make sense to you guys. Okay, so that is one of the problems with gluten. And of course, if you have celiac, you have to avoid gluten tons. And then also too, like wheat, even if you see gluten-free, right? Oftentimes, like, you know, wheat, gluten, like they are processed in the same plant. So you have to be careful of that anyway. But something else too with wheat, it's hard to digest, right? And most of the wheat in the US, I said, is stripped of all its nutrients, okay? Now, I do want to talk a little bit now about the grains, because this is something that is very controversial. And some of you are probably going to be like, Kristen, you don't know what you're talking about. Grains are healthy. My doctor said they're fine. It depends on the person, okay? Because most grains are inflammatory. And one of the reasons why they're inflammatory is because grains also have lectins in them, okay? And lectins can cause inflammation in the body, as I said before. If you want to learn more about lectins, Dr. Stephen Gundry, he's written The Longevity Diet, The Plant Paradox. He'll teach you all about lectins. You can read about it online. But grains are inflammatory as well, okay? So you want to be mindful. Now, there are some grains that are not inflammatory. So like millet, for example, amaranth, buckwheat groats, that's actually considered a fruit. There's a few others that are much more heart healthy than grains. Also, the problem with grains too, guys, is that people think, well, grains are high in fiber, so they're healthy to eat. Not necessarily true, okay? Most, like white rice, for example, is like stripped of all its nutrients, right? And so there's not much nutritional value at all. There's no fiber, no protein, no nothing in white rice. It's essentially broken down as sugar into your body. Brown rice is not much better, right? I'm not saying that they're bad foods, like they're toxic, but they can simulate an inflammatory response in your body. So especially if you have RA, for example, rheumatoid arthritis, any kind of autoimmune condition, rice is something that you'll want to minimize because of its inflammatory response in the body. Okay, alcohol. I'm so sorry. I know it's like 6 o'clock Eastern time right now. I know a lot of you guys are heading out to happy hour probably. I'm going to go get a couple cocktails later for sure. But alcohol is known to be an inflammatory as well. Alcohol is actually a toxin to the body. So people don't realize this, guys. There are 4 macronutrients, right? There's protein, fat, carb, and alcohol. Okay. And your body has a process of operations in terms of how it digests your food. Okay. So the first thing your body wants to get rid of is alcohol. It's a toxin. Your liver's like, get this shit out of my body, right? So if you have a dinner, let's say you have a glass of wine with like a steak, a potato, and like green beans, I don't know. Guess what? Your body's going to burn the alcohol first, okay? Then it's going to burn the carbohydrate, right, from the potato, right? And then you're going to be left with the protein and the fat. And this is going to get stored, okay, as fat in your body, right? Because your body doesn't need any more energy. It's going to store it, right? So that's one of the reasons why alcohol is also a no-no for weight loss, or minimizing it for weight loss, because it's literally going to cause your body to store everything else as fat, right? But it is an inflammatory. It causes a stress on the body. Anything that causes stress in the body is going to cause inflammation. So I'm Italian, as all you guys know. I talk about it all the time in the group. You know, a little bit of red wine. Okay, red wine would be one of the better alcohols to have because of the antioxidant properties in it. But too much red wine, right, is going to cause inflammation in the body, right? So again, we talk about balance and moderation, right? A little bit of red wine, you know, each night or during the week, no, it's not bad for you. It can definitely help improve your heart health. Okay, it's full of resveratrol, right, which is known to help improve your health, thin your arteries. But too much alcohol is going to be inflammatory, right? So for all of my men, for example, and I'm not even going to, you know, discriminate against men here, women that, you know, we're lean on top, lean here, and we got a big belly here, okay? Especially if we're up top right here. So this is the spot where we are bloated, okay? It gets hard here, and then we're big here. That's inflammation in your small intestine, okay? And oftentimes, guys, alcohol, which is fermented, okay, it causes further fermentation right here in the small intestine, right? And really, any of these foods can cause inflammation in the small intestine, right? And that's where you get this big belly. So if you're looking at these foods right now and you're thinking, oh my God, I eat all of this, I'll talk about sugar in a second. If you're eating all of this is like the main source of your diet, and we have this belly that's just like will never flatten, and you work out like crazy, this is why. This is why. And not so much like, you know, just eating all these foods, but how much of these foods. And I'm going to talk about that in a few minutes here. Okay. I'm almost 30 minutes in, so I'm going to try to speed this up a little bit. Comment below if you're enjoying this. I want to make sure that this is helpful to you guys, that I'm not just like rambling about foods. Like I said, I could talk about this for hours, but I'm really trying to keep this succinct and to the point, and not keep you here for hours on end. Okay. So alcohol is an inflammatory, okay? Please don't think that I'm going to tell you not to eat any of these foods. I will tell you like a little bit more about this in a minute here. Okay, now sugar. Notice how I wrote sugar is like it's all in capitals, and I saved it for last because of all the diets out there, okay? We can talk about keto, paleo, Whole30, I don't know, the cabbage soup diet. We have the Mediterranean diet, like all the different diets out there. They all have their different beliefs, okay? Avoid legumes, avoid dairy, vegans, avoid meat, you know, whatever, all these different diets. Every single diet says we have to cut our sugar. Sugar is the ultimate inflammatory, okay? If you guys remember one food from today's talk, I want it to be sugar. And another reason why the inflammation rate is so high in this country and why we see a catastrophic level of obesity, diabetes, PCOS is on the rise. We see more chronic, you know, Alzheimer's, dementia, Parkinson's, cancer. All of these diseases have been linked to increased sugar consumption, okay? And earlier I was talking about dairy, for example. How dairy is a carbohydrate. And any carbohydrate, you guys, doesn't matter what it is, fruit even, I'm gonna talk about fructose in a second, is processed as sugar, okay? Even if you eat too much protein, if you eat too much meat, it is metabolized as sugar, People don't know that. Your body can only consume, or I'm sorry, your body can only metabolize so much protein. So once it's hit its max, it's going to store it as sugar and as fat. Okay, it's going to metabolize the sugar, store it as fat. Okay, so I want to talk about sugar in the sense of like fructose, because I get a lot of questions about fruits. A lot of people are like, well, I love fruit. Fruit's healthy. I know medical mediums like eat all the fruit in the world. I know Steve Jobs he was a fruitarian before he passed away, pancreatic cancer. So what about fruit? What's the deal with fruit? I'm gonna read you guys a study. Okay, I actually have it here on my computer. But I'm gonna pull it up. Oh, I'm gonna read it right here. Okay, I'm like all in your guys' faces. Sorry. Okay, so this was a study that talked specifically about fructose. Fructose is the sugar in fruits. Okay, all fruits have fructose, right? High fructose corn syrup, right? So it's actually much higher level of fructose. Okay. Fructose is known to be a toxin to the liver when consumed too much, especially if it's not consumed with adequate protein, fiber, or fats. Okay, so just eating just pure fructose, a lot of sugar is really problematic. But I want to explain why, okay, and how it's related to inflammation here. Okay, so this study was called the Fructose-Induced Inflammation, and it comes from this special journal that was published in 2019 called Progress in Cardiovascular Disease. So this entire publication was about the heart, okay, and inflammation in the body. So the overconsumption of fructose, I'm going to read this passage because this is like gold right here, guys. All right, so listen up real closely. The overconsumption of fructose leads to inflammation in all cells that metabolize it rapidly. When fructose is metabolized, the subsequent inflammation leads to an increase in intracellular cortisol in order to help squelch the inflammation. Guys, cortisol. What is cortisol? Who can tell me? Comment below if you know what it is. Okay. Cortisol is the stress hormone. And as I said before, chronic stress will lead to chronic inflammation, right? This is why we need to minimize our stress as much as possible, okay? Unfortunately, the increase in intracellular cortisol leads to an increased flux of fatty acids and leads to fat storage to turn into visceral fat tissue. Visceral fat is fat that is literally around your organs, okay? And that is like the worst fat to have, okay? Especially if you have it in this area here, okay? But around the liver, anything like that, okay? That's going to be a really bad area to have the extra fat right there. Okay, so furthermore, this is one of my favorite parts so you guys understand. Fructose in the brain, either from uptake via the blood-brain barrier or from excessive glucose. Glucose is what your body turns carbs into. Carbohydrates, like white rice, for example, turns to glucose. That's your energy, right? So excessive glucose stimulates an increased release of cortisol, leading to overall insulin resistance and further body fattening, aka weight gain. Okay, so this is why when people say to me, all I eat is chicken and white rice, or I just have potatoes and I don't know, a vegetable, right? I mean, those foods still break down as sugar, right? I'm not saying that they're bad foods, but when we eat all these refined carbohydrates, right, or all these simple carbohydrates rather, okay, we're going to create an inflammatory response in the body. We're going to have more aches and pains, and we're not going to see the scale go down. Or you're going to have to work your ass off to burn off all those calories, okay? Because sugar is very caloric, right? And most of us are not active enough to burn up all the sugar that we're consuming, right? I mean, if you have like some athletes that are consuming tons of white rice and other fruit, for example, that's fine. They're burning it off. They're using it as quick energy sources and glucose. But the majority of us are not like that, okay? So that is the problem with sugar, right? And high sugar fruits. We're having like tons of mango, tons of pineapple. Those are all going to be really high sugar. So lots of them. Okay, and I'm going to talk about portions here in a moment. But again, guys, sugar is found everywhere. So I talked about fructose, obviously in fruits, but we're seeing table sugar, cane juice, cane syrup, brown rice syrup. That's another sugar derivative. Honey is another sugar, right? Very, very high in carbohydrates. Honey is less glycemic, but it still is going to stimulate, a immune system response, right? So the less sugar we have in our system, the better, especially if we're less mobile, especially if we are diabetic, especially if we are prone to cancer, especially if we have any kind of neurological, disease, right? So Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, dementia. We really have to minimize our sugar intake, okay? Comment below if this is helping you guys. That's really important to me. This is helping you. Okay. So, a lot of times people say, okay, well, I know I'm eating some inflammatory foods and I'm just going to just take some anti-inflammatories. I'm going to take fish oil. I'm going to take turmeric. I'm going to take curcumin. I'm going to, have more coconut oil, avocado oil, or avocados, whatever. These are anti-inflammatories. Okay. Very true. Okay. However, supplements alone will not get rid of inflammation if you are eating a high inflammatory diet. So if you keep eating all of these foods, right, a lot of them especially, and you just pop 1 or 2 fish oils a day, maybe sprinkle your food with turmeric, guess what? You're not going to see a benefit, okay? You have to really clean out your diet to see changes. Okay, unless you want to live on medication for the rest of your life. If you want to take a pill, that's totally different. You want to take medication, that's fine, right? I still suggest changing your diet, of course, but a lot of people I work with and talk to don't want to rely on medication for the rest of their life, right? Also, guys, too, high blood pressure. Well, high blood pressure, they don't talk about this either because cardiologists really weren't trained in nutrition. High blood pressure also is a consequence of inflammation in the body because it is a stressor. And how does high blood pressure happen? From increased stress on the body. It's all related to stress, all of it. This is why it's a lifestyle. It's not a diet, it's a lifestyle. Comment below if you've heard that before and comment below if you believe that. Okay? Okay, so go ahead and take your fish oil, but unless you're cleaning up your diet, it's not going to do much. Mark my words, okay? Now, here's the golden question. How to avoid inflammatory foods. Okay, so obviously, guys, there are so many alternatives on the market these days for all of these foods, all right? Using olive, coconut, avocado oil are going to be better. There are so many dairy-free alternatives. But remember, dairy is not necessarily an inflammatory, right? There's conflicting research out there. What we do know about dairy is that a lot of people can't digest it, and we know that dairy does break down as sugar in the body, which sugar is an inflammatory. Okay, so that's why dairy is a question mark. But if you know you don't do well with dairy, definitely try a nut alternative. You can try soy milk. You can do hemp milk. I love flaxseed milk. That's my personal favorite. I'm going to see if there's anyone making comments. No comments. Okay. Comment below if you're still with me. Oh, awesome. Oh, I'm seeing more comments. Awesome. This is great. Awesome. Diane, this is really helpful. Yay. Ryan, you're enjoying this. Awesome. Oh, Lauren is Ryan's girlfriend. Awesome. Okay. Okay. Let's talk about this here. So how to avoid these foods. So obviously, guys, go for the alternatives. Okay. So for example, dairy alternatives, meat, if you're going to do meat, obviously you want to do more grass-fed, you want to do, pasture is always the best, it's just more expensive. But I would also, guys, honestly, if you eat meat like all the time, I would minimize your meat intake because like I said, it's going to break down as sugar, okay? Is soy milk okay, Diane? I'm going to talk about, I got to do another video on soy, okay? Soy is not an inflammatory, that's why it's not on this list. If you're going to do soy milk, Diane, make sure it's organic soy milk. 95% of US soy is genetically modified, so make sure you're using organic soy milk. Make sure there's no added sugar because oftentimes we get these and less inflammatory products, but then there's sugar in it. Like, oh my God, like avocado ice cream, okay? Or oat ice cream, or what else is there? Coconut ice cream, all these dairy-free alternatives. And then they're full of sugar. It's like, really? So I'm gonna do another video on ice cream because I'm still gonna do that. But we have to read labels. We have to be mindful of what is in food. Because if you're not reading labels, guys, you're not educating yourself. You're not. You're just being blind and eating whatever because you don't care. All right? So I know you care. That's why you're watching this video, because you care. You care about your health, right? Health first, weight loss second, both with strategy. Okay? Did I answer your question, Diane? I hope so. Okay. All right, awesome. Let's see, wheat, gluten, grains. Earlier, I gave a few examples. Oh, if you are gonna do like, let's see, bread, for example, like millet bread. It's like a great option for it's an anti-inflammatory grain. So millet is a grain, but it's not inflammatory because there's no lectins in it, right? So lectin is what makes grains inflammatory. So millet bread, although millet bread is a healthier alternative, it's not less calories. So that's why I also say, eating for health is not always the same for eating for weight loss, because sometimes these healthier foods have more calories than the other foods, right? So I'll talk about that in a second. But you can also do like rice cauliflower, rice broccoli. Those are some other options too. One of my clients, I've had a few clients that are Indian, and so and guys, over a third of the Indian population is diabetic, right? And rice is one of their staples. So oftentimes switching to a better grain is a good option for fighting inflammation. Alcohol, so obviously like having a better, I mentioned red wine earlier, or drinks with like less alcohol content, right? So what makes alcohol more caloric, more inflammatory is what percent ABV is in it, okay? I mentioned red wine because of the antioxidants. It's full of resveratrol, which is good for the heart. But the higher alcohol content in your beverages, the more inflammatory it's going to be. Or the more you consume alcohol, the more inflammation you're putting on your body. A few glasses of wine a week is not going to kill you. What will create a lot of stress in the body is drinking a bottle of wine every night, right? Okay, good. Diane, answer your question. Oh, I see Ryan, you're asking questions about keto. Okay, yeah, keto, yeah, I mean, keto is one of those things. It really depends on the person. Is it healthy? It can be. It depends how you do it. Is it required for weight loss? No. I see some of my clients, they're eating carbs and losing weight. But I know Ryan has some medical issues. So I actually did a whole video on keto, and I'll tag you in it with my thoughts on keto. So I'll talk about that a little bit. Okay. And then sugar. You guys, so this is getting a little bit long. I have a whole article on my blog. I'll put a link in the comments here about sugar and sugar, the difference between artificial sweeteners and sugar alcohols, because they're not the same thing. And, those are going to be sugar alternatives for you. So taking out, high fructose corn syrup, less fructose in the system. Remember, too much fructose is toxic to the liver, right? So I'll post a link about sugar, how to, I prefer stevia, monk fruit. Those are my top two. Erythritol is a better sugar alcohol. It's the best sugar alcohol in the market. You want to avoid sorbitol, maltitol, inositol is another one. Anything that ends in TOL, you want to avoid because it's going to cause bloating. You think you're bloated from too much of this? Try having something with sorbitol in it. Some people, not everybody. Okay. So how to avoid these foods is by really tapping into the alternatives and also just minimizing the alcohol, those foods too. Okay, so last thing I want to talk about today. What can I eat and how much? Okay, because a lot of you are probably looking at this and you're like, okay, Kristen, you've taken away all of my joy. What am I going to do now? What am I going to buy at the grocery store? Just vegetables? The answer to that is no, okay? And you have heard me talk in this group about food freedom before. And if you haven't heard me talk about food freedom before, go back and watch the trainings at the top of this page, because I am a firm believer in having the most flexible diet feasible, okay? One of the best dietitians I've ever worked with, her name was Kate Senna. She's out of Canada, actually. I actually met her at one of the conventions I went to last summer. She said the best diet is the least stressful and offers the most variety, okay? And so that is my goal with everybody that I work with. I want everyone to be able to eat all of the macronutrients, fats, carbs, protein, and alcohol, okay? But of course, it really depends on a few things. I cannot stand here in front of you and tell you to have 3 servings of meat, 1 serving of alcohol. I can't give you numbers because each and every one of you watching this video is completely different. You have completely different health concerns, okay? So for example, if you have rheumatoid arthritis, you can't eat as many grains as someone who doesn't. I can have grains and have no problem, but you might have grains and flare up, right? If you have eczema, for example, dairy is something to avoid, right? I don't have dairy because I don't digest it well, right? So every person's body is different, right? Also too, like if you are diabetic, you can't get away with having sugar. You're gonna have to cut down on some of the foods that break down as sugar, right? So every person's very, very different. So it really depends on the person. Also depends on your not your genetic, your ethnicity as well. So for example, most Asians are lactose intolerant because milk, dairy, I should say, and dairy is so, widespread, it is not part of their culture, right? They don't consume dairy. And even a lot of them are allergic to alcohol too, okay? So you really got to consider a few things. And it really depends on your current health conditions. It depends on your background, right? And it depends on your goals too, right? Like, if someone were to tell me, like, Kristen, like, if you want to lose 15 pounds, like, you can't have pizza, like, it's not allowed. It's cheese, it's inflammatory, the bread is inflammatory, you just can't, the meat on it, the processed meat's inflammatory, you just can't eat it. I'd be like, okay, right? But, like, I don't have any major health issues. I just want to lose 15 pounds. I can lose 15 pounds and have pizza. It's totally possible. But if I'm in dire health conditions, like my life is on the line, okay, because of inflammation, I probably shouldn't eat that kind of pizza unless it's like dairy-free alternatives, no meat on top, whatever. So here's my bottom line. There is no cookie cutter way to answer this question, okay? It really requires a knowledge of who you are as a person. You cannot go on Google. Mark my words, guys. You cannot go on Google and search, how much dairy can I have per day? How much fruit can I have per day? Because here's what's going to happen. Number one, you're going to find 50 articles saying 50 different things, and none of those articles know who you are as a person. Google, Alexa, whoever the hell it is these days, they don't know who you are. And nobody should give you any nutrition advice unless they know you. They know your medical history, they know your family's medical history, they know your goals, maybe they know your blood work depending on your conditions, any tests you've done. Don't ever take advice on nutrition from someone that does not know who you are. I never give medical or any nutrition advice unless I know the person. I get so many questions, you guys. Well, how much fruit can I have? And I always say, well, it depends. Always say it. I never say, like, you get 1 per day or 2 per day. Unless I know the person. I have to know them. And I have to know, like, how active they are. I have to know, like, their medical background. Okay, so I hope that makes sense. And I hope you're not discouraged by my answer to this question. But I hope you understand that that's the honest truth. And if anyone tells you otherwise, they're not doing you a service. They're trying to give you a Band-Aid. They're trying to make you feel better by giving you a number. And you might not get the result that you want. Okay, so if you're really serious about improving your health, you want to lose weight, and you want to keep it off for the rest of your life and feel good, all right, guys, book a free call with me, and I will walk you through how to have a healthy diet, how to avoid inflammation, and how to, live your life, joint-free or, pain-free, without chronic inflammation, sleep better, have less stress on the body, and actually lose the weight that you want, because the more inflammation you have in your body, the harder it's going to be to lose weight. I want you guys to understand that. I'm going to say it again. The more inflammation you have in your body, the harder it is to lose weight. And as I said before, inflammation is caused by so many things, right? But it's very easy to fix that. It's very easy to fix it, but I have to know. Okay, I'll definitely talk to Ryan soon. Awesome. I know he's recovering from his Ryan broke his arm last Friday, you guys. Oh my gosh. And Ryan and I were supposed to talk, and this poor guy, I really want to thank him. He was like emailing me, messaging me, like talking into his phone. Kristen, I just fell and broke my arm. I'm going to the hospital. I'm like, how are you even texting me or whatever? And he was doing voice to text. But thank you, and I definitely will talk to Ryan soon. I want you guys to know that this is doable. If you're looking at this and thinking, I can't do this, you absolutely can. You do not, unless you have some severe, severe health issues, you do not have to give all these up 100%. But we have to modify it in some way for you to see the results that you want. But I promise you, I'm not going to take it away from you. You can ask any of the clients here in the group. Jen is someone here. She's down at least 15 pounds, I think, at this point. And she said to me from the very beginning, Kristen, I love my wine. I have 2 kids. I work in hospitality. My husband makes pasta, he's Italian. But she had some hormone issues, number one. Number two, she wants to lose weight. 20 pounds is her goal, 20, 25 pounds. And I said, okay, I'm not going to take wine away from you, and you can still have your pasta with your family, and you can still have your chocolate because we love chocolate. And she's a baker, by the way. And she's getting results, and she's feeling great. Okay. And we didn't take everything away. So you don't have to take everything away. You can have food freedom, but there is strategy. Health first, weight loss second, both with strategy. If you want to learn about the strategy, book a free strategy session with me. That's what I call it. You go to createmyweight.com/apply, and you can book a free call with me. We'll talk about 45 minutes. So I really can get to know who you are and how I can help you and what this strategy would look like for you. Because every person I talk to is different. Okay? So comment below your big takeaway from this video today. Seizures. Okay, got it. Yeah, so anything like that, definitely reducing the sugar is going to be super, super important. Absolutely. And when I talk to Brian, I'll talk to him more about that. I have a lot going through my mind right now about what he needs, so I'll definitely share that with you. Lauren, I know you're on his Facebook, so I'll talk to you guys soon. Okay. Comment below, guys, with one takeaway or more that you learned today. I know this training went a little longer, but I could have gone for hours. And thank you for joining, and I'll talk to you guys next week. I'll talk about ice cream or soy. We'll see which one I'll do. All right, bye guys.